Hi, this is Logan Garibay, and today I want to talk about Mark Maron and Ben from Questing Beasts, and what Ben from Questing Beasts is doing in Dungeons and Dragons commentary, and why I think he is like Mark Maron in Dungeons and Dragons commentary. All right, let's go forward. Okay, so first of all, let me address an elephant in the room. A lot of people would say, "Oh, Ben from Questing Beasts isn't a Dungeons and Dragons commentator. He's an OSR. He's an OSR commentator." It is true that Ben from Questing Beasts is specifically 100% doing content for OSR. Actually, not 100%. At least 90% doing content for OSR. And generally, I don't think I've ever seen him review like, oh, you know what? I can say he is a D&D commentator because he did literally read the 1E Dungeon Master Guide on his channel. So so no matter how you want to spin it, he is without a doubt 100% a D&D commentator, and nobody can say he's not a D&D commentator because he does OSR material, right? But the reality is all OSR commentators, all channels that are focused on OSR, they're still doing D&D content, right? So if your channel's about OSR, old school rules, old school revival, it has different meanings. But if you're doing OSR, right, and you're like, oh, I'm talking about, Five Torches Deep, right? That's just a skin of some BX or some Moldvay or some Zeb Cook, old D&D, right? So same thing with OSE, Old School Essentials. It's just a BX rehash, white hack, black hack, whatever you're talking. It's just people are nostalgic for old versions of D&D, and even though you don't have the D&D label on it, don't fool yourself. You're still a D&D commentator, right? Just because you're 1 degree off of Dungeons & Dragons doesn't make you an OSR commentator. Ben from Questing Beasts is absolutely a D&D commentator, okay? And the thing is, the reality is all these small games, these OSR, these tiny, tiny games, none of them really escape the orbit of Dungeons & Dragons. A lot of people think they do. They don't, right? So, all right, with that said, let's talk about Mark Maron and let's talk about Questing Beast as a D&D commentator, okay? So Mark Maron is really special in comedy, right? He did something that is unprecedented, and I want to tell you what it is now, because I think that Ben from Questing Beast is becoming the Mark Maron of tabletop role-playing game designers, okay? So here we go. So Mark Maron is a stand-up. Brick wall behind you, microphone in your hand. You stand in front of a brick wall and you tell jokes. He is an old school stand-up, literally stand-up comic, okay? Now, there's nothing special about a stand-up comic. There's 1,000 of them, literally 1,000, right? And maybe there's 100 that are famous and are really super good at it, right? And they don't do local bars. They're like, they go on Conan, right? So there are a ton of stand-up comics. There's really nothing special about a stand-up comic from the perspective we're talking about right now. But Mark Maron is incredibly special when it comes to stand-up comics. He did a podcast which accomplished many things. One, it helped solidify podcasts. It helped podcasts be a very solid platform while podcasts mattered. I don't think podcasts matter anymore. However, what was accomplished in the podcast space definitely matters, right? And a lot of D&D commentary and a lot of overall content commentary owes a great amount to the decade to maybe 15 years when podcasts were king of the world. That's no longer the case now, but what podcasts accomplished in tabletop role-playing games in many areas of content coverage, podcasts are incredibly important, okay? Now, what Mark Maron did was he did about 400 or 500 interviews with stand-up comedians. But it was incredible what he did. Not only did he talk to some of the biggest, he talked to everybody. Like, I think he talked to, like, if you were a stand-up comic, the odds that you were not interviewed by Mark Maron there was a lot more odds that you were not. There were a lot more odds that you were interviewed by him. If you had any significance, you were interviewed by him. It's easier to count the famous stand-up comics that were not interviewed by Mark Maron than were. And what he did was, through these podcast interviews, his show became a museum of stand-up comedians. But not only did he interview the very, very famous, he also interviewed bog standard dirt farmer comedians, people that nobody but the most ardent stand-up comedian fan would know of, right? And here's the thing. Mark Maron, and these are his words, he went through a major addiction phase, and he went through a sitcom phase where he did a sitcom and it failed, right? And he went through a economic struggle phase, and he went through a success phase, right? So the reality is, he was a real stand-up comic. And when it came to stand-up comics, 99% of all stand-up comics gave Mark Maron respect. And so literally hundreds of them drove out to his garage to be on his podcast. And it was incredible. And what he did is unprecedented in interviewing, covering one industry at a level that no other interview has really covered in industry. Okay? So the reality is, there's a history behind Mark Maron that has to be understood. Ben from Questing Beast is right now becoming the Mark Maron of tabletop role-playing game designers. He is a tabletop role-playing game designer. He can design Knave. He is highly respected by virtually every tabletop role-playing game designer that comes across him as a person, right? And he has close to 50,000 subs, right? Which isn't a ton, right? He is definitely quality over quantity, but the reality is, he reminds me of Mark Maron. He is covering the industry at a level that really hasn't been seen before. If maybe not by the numbers, definitely by he's getting the best of the best, right? So Seskorkowski. And the other thing is, he is interviewing D&D commentators. Oh, and I said he is the Mark Maron of tabletop role-playing designers. That's not quite correct. Sorry. It's of D&D commentators, right? So he is actually covering other D&D commentators. So he did Seth Korkowski. He did Professor Dungeon Master. He did interview with Hankin Farinale, right? And dozens. Like, he's really starting on a roll where he's bringing in Kingsdale, another D&D, like the best of the best are coming on his show, and he's just very methodically building an amazing collection of interviews of, not tabletop role-playing designers, but specifically D&D commentators, right? It's just unheard of. It's truly unheard of. So I really think, and the last thing I have to say is, if there is a lawful good paladin among D&D commentators, it is Ben from Questing Beast. He doesn't curse. He is respectful in every video, in every way. He doesn't do clickbait titles, right? He's designed his own role-playing game, so he knows what he's talking about. His level of knowledge is incredible. He is the nicest guy, and honestly, I have to say, when it comes to D&D commentary, I will tell you right now, I don't think many people beat me at this game. I really don't. There are tons of channels that have way more views than I do that I have no respect for. None, right? But when it comes to Ben from Questing Beast, I don't care who you talk to. He beats everybody hands down. No two ways about it. He beats me. He beats Ginny D. He beats everybody. He just goes at it in a way that is so methodical, respectful. His book reviews are on point. He's a champion for the OSR. When it comes to D&D commentary, he is the gold standard, period. All that's my opinion. What do you think? One, are you aware of what Mark Maron accomplished? And do you think we have the ability to have a Mark Maron within the tabletop role-playing game industry, specifically covering D&D commentators, which is incredibly niche, right? But he's doing it. And also, what are your thoughts on Ben from Questing Beasts as far as him being the gold standard when it comes to D&D commentators? Who do you think is better and why? I'd love it. And don't even start with Matt Mercer, right? Because I'll tell you right now, one, he's not really a commentator, doesn't commentate that much on it. He does a lot more actual plays than he does commentating. And then two, Matt Mercer is a part-timer. This ain't even his main gig, right? He does some D&D stuff when he's taking time off of Hollywood, right? It's not even his focus, right? So I really don't put him high on the list of D&D commentators at all. I will admit he's a very good he is the best public dungeon master who eschews the rules that's ever existed, but he isn't even close to the top of the D&D commentator list. So Ben from Questing Beasts is there anybody out there better than him? Let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.